Where are we at? We're at 5:59.
Our city election used to be separated from the national. It's a much better system.
Yeah. You know who they are.
Independent. It would be Friday if Friday wasn't holiday. Okay, this person did.
At 6? All right.
FCR valid and registration is good, therefore we can now count.
All right. I believe we have a quorum. I believe that we are ready to start. So call the meeting to order.
All right, Brett Bierce,
Here.
Leg, Gross. Sorry, I'm just completely. Okay. Yeah.
Here.
All right, Kevin Wilkinson,
Present.
Timothy Welsh, here. David McLaughlin,
Here.
Nicholas Watnowski.
Here.
Is there anybody else I didn't call?
How you doing?
Huckins, there you go.
I'm here.
We have a quorum.
All right.
You do have Glenn Goldsmith, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Good, okay, great, thank you.
You've got 2 jurisdictions and you've got
more than 3.
All right. So we have a quorum. Change in pace. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda from.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
One abstention.
I wasn't at the meeting.
Item number 4 on the agenda, approval of the September 13th, 2023 CTAC meeting minutes. Since we didn't meet last month,
Right place, Kevin.
do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of September.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Wilkins with the second, and any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
No, I meant to abstain. I didn't mean to abstain from the previous one.
Okay,
I got ahead of myself.
it's all right. And so motion passes. Public comment. I understand we have some emails that need to be read.
Yes, I have 2 public comments. This is Coley, by the way. From John Bryant, we have an email that states, I'm one of the many against a regional authority for our region. Citizens have been taxed enough and it is time to stop. You should tax the businesses that come in and create all the traffic, not the people who have lived here for many generations. Tax the home builders and tax all the people who drive through the area that go north and south of our homes. I will say our biggest problem is due to not having the ability to say no more homes. The home builders are our biggest problem. Tax them. Thank you. And from Matt Steinbaum, we received a phone call, and he is a college student at UMW, and he called to relay comments and concerns about trail improvements to the VCR trail and the Smith Run Trail, and also has hopes that the small section of the trail off River Road will become developed. Thank you.
More trails or in favor of the next trail?
Yes, he's in favor of more trails and wants improvements to the trails.
It's okay. Okay, do we have any other public comment? No? Okay. Item number 6 on the agenda, approving the 2024 calendar. I did add kind of a subsection to this, talking about reaching out to CTAC members for proposed meeting dates / times to increase turnout. I will say as we all know, last month we did not have a quorum. I sent out the email. We put out, both staff, I really appreciate the efforts that you put into making sure that everyone showed up, or at least the quorum showed up. But the question was also raised of, are these meeting times the best compromise according to everyone's schedules? When we've been meeting the second Wednesday of the month, well, since before I was here, I haven't been here that long. But is it worth discussing moving that? I will say that I personally probably am not in favor of changing the dates, but I am definitely open to discussion. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I don't see a justification for something different.
Okay, I'm good with it. Good with that?
Well, unless we had input from people that don't show up.
No, I did not receive. Hey, in my email, I asked that people tell me if there are any issues, and I did not receive any such. The only explanation I got from people who aren't here are from people who are here regularly enough, basically saying, oh, I've got stuff going on right now. I'll be there in January. Which I said, great, but all the stuff's on the agenda for November. So I have not gotten any specific information. I guess if we don't have any desire to, then I don't think we need to do that. So do I have a motion to approve the calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the calendar.
Do I have a second? All right, we have a second.
Comment?
Oh, comment?
Yeah, just one kind. So what is important we've learned over some time is that, and we have done it, so I just want to bring it out, is that we make sure that our meeting is prior to the PC. So
Yes.
I always look for that on they did that. So
Yeah, I believe we do have
good
that.
on you. So
And that's gonna come into play this month, because there are a few things on our agenda today that are going to be necessary for the PC meeting. Yes.
Just from you as folks, the CTAC color representative on policy committee, on voting. So, us board is going to keep some out to the policy. Also, everyone else can also go to the policy committee and speak to the public comment. So don't forget about those. Don't just have to come to the meeting and then it just dies here. And also, send your comments or suggestions to the localities. So last year we had a bunch of concerns raised about no chance of being so we took those letters that we received and we put a letter by the chairman, cover letter. We sent it to Caroline County and said people have raised issues, but it's you are the responsible party that you want to have those abilities to forward stuff to localities or to be or to go to the policy committee and ask for something to be done. Now, just my comments to you, members of the committee. You have legs outside of this committee that you can take matters further. Yes, you do good. Yeah, good comments and stuff that you can.
And having been to a couple of those meetings now, they are somewhat responsive. They're elected officials, so they want to listen to their constituents. And then they're also, there's someone from VDOT there. There's someone from, I'm trying to remember what everyone else is. Sorry? Yeah. So there are people who can actually get things done there if we have concerns that need to be, if you have concerns as a person, I think I'm the representative of CTAC, so CTAC, that's for me to say something to the policy committee, I can, but if you go there as yourself, you can say something as well. Do you have something you want to say?
yeah, I have to find that, but you're going as a general public member. You're not representing CTAC, only you or your representative can do that.
Yes.
So the chair, or in the absence of the chair, somebody nominated by the chair from all of you, go and speak formally as a member, an actual member. Don't get to vote. You can request anyone you want. Everybody else can also then speak as an individual in the policy.
And just watching them the videos, because you could go quickly through the stuff that's more boring or not interesting. You can move right through it. That's very helpful.
All right. So, did you have any other discussion on the calendar?
Yeah, this is Glenn Goldsmith. I've got a comment. I owe you guys an explanation as far as my schedule. So I work in DC and I get off between 4 and 5 o'clock. And in the past, I would come pre-COVID, but given the distance, and I'm not making an excuse, but what I'm saying is sometimes I'm either going to be late or I may not even make it, given I'm coming from LaFont Plaza. So I just want to just give everybody the opportunity to hear from me because you guys see me a lot on the call, and there are times I'm unable to make it. But that's I try to let everybody know in a timely fashion. I do security work, cybersecurity for the federal government, so it's kind of hard to to juggle that and get there. But I just at least want to give everybody the opportunity to hear from me. A, why I'm not in the room all the time. B, what my schedule is, and C, I would like to continue to participate in the CTAC meeting. So just know that and hear that from me, if I may.
Thank you for that.
Okay,
Any
thank
thoughts
you.
on it? Thank you. Any other thoughts on the calendar? All right, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of approving the 2024 calendar, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously.
Stop.
What terrible speaker is
We
that?
have a, thank God we have a,
That voice is horrible. So,
Just opened up CTAC and went directly to it.
so we can edit out the,
I had a radio show for 4 years. I'm still not used to my voice. 6B, the Community Engagement Equity Plan. Coley?
Thank you. These are, the policy committee wanted to change a few, oh, hi Rupert. This is Coley, sorry. Starting over. Thank you. The proposed changes to the community engagement and equity plan are as follows on the screen. So the change would be allow community members to submit comments in advance of the meeting to be, instead of read by staff, attached to emailed agendas and printed to the agendas, and for staff to read a brief summary. This is for the policy committee. And then the other change would be for the transportation improvement program to, instead of 30 days public comment period, a 20-day public comment period. Can I answer any?
What was on the last one there? What's the the 20 days by 30 days? What's the pros and cons of that proposal?
So I'll speak to that one.
Thank you.
So for tip amendments, it's currently 30 days. If you look at the cadence of the policy committee meetings, half of the meetings would result in that after public comment is open, the next meeting would have the public comment hearing as well as the capacity for the PC to take action. Half of the meetings, the hearing would happen at the next meeting after public comment is announced, but no decisions would be made into the following meeting, so it could actually cause some confusion of when folks were supposed to speak up. This always ensures that after the policy committee opens a call for public comment, that the very next policy committee would have both the public hearing for that, as well as you would be able to make comment at the hearing at the same night that they're looking to make any decisions regarding amending the TIP. So we're actually coming into line of a practice that more MPOs do. Hampton Roads uses like a 14-day period. My previous MPO used a similar 20-day. And the reason why it's 20 days is that due to the holiday schedule, particularly in like January, February, March, you might actually have a cadence where it's up to do a 21-day period. It might be some questions of when, FAMPO staff can have that. So 20 days always ensures that the public hearing will be at the next policy committee date after they open public comment. So it guarantees that it's going to be, you speak at the meeting, they're making the decisions at the meeting. It clarifies that, rather than sometimes it's going to be hearing at there and they'll make a decision. Sometimes it could be a month apart.
Makes perfect sense to me. This is Rupert. I would make the motion to approve these process changes.
I would like to talk about these separately. Can we, I'm not sure the Roberts in terms of deciding whether or not we can approve them separately.
So just take a second for the motion and then have discussion.
Okay.
We can discuss the two separately, but at least finish with this motion.
So do I have a second on Rupert's motion?
I'll second Rupert's motion.
Okay, so for discussion, I have some comments on this. We talked about this at the informal information session that we had last month. And I'm still very opposed to the 6B1, the change in the comment procedure. What I've heard on the 6B2 on the comment period, I understand the logic for that, and I'm willing to let that go. But I personally am very opposed to the 6B1. To me, this is this could be used as a way to stifle voices, and not everyone has the access to get to these meetings. I am, I myself, I struggle to get to these meetings, and having the email as an option is important, but also having your words read. Summaries can always be a misinterpretation, and there is value to having your words listened to. And I know that these are long meetings, and we want to hear or we want to get through them. And sometimes you have a strong opinion, you're not going to change your mind. But if you're in a position of making decision making, you owe it to the constituents to listen to them. And I think that there are moments when it is effective. And I'll be honest, I've listened to some emails that I was like, oh, come on, just move on. I've listened to some emails that I just didn't want to listen to, but I think it's necessary to listen to those emails, the words of the constituents. So I personally oppose 6B1. I'm willing to go along with 6B2.
What's the background of why it was changed to this?
I do not know that.
There was the policy committee asked staff to change this to have just the emailed copy and the printed copy. FAMPO staff then pushed back and said, well, please could we at least read a summary? So that was a compromise that stuck there. So the request came from the policy committee members. And I think part of the reason is not just that the meetings are long, but they have been the past 2 years had a number of people who write the same comment basically every month. And after you've heard it 13 times, to hear it yet again at the next meeting, it doesn't change their views at all, or call a vote at all, or do anything. It's just, and they think the feeling is that we've heard that you want this thing and we can't give you this thing because it's too expensive and we don't have the money. Well, if you're going to say it every month now till the day we die, sort of thing. So I think the repetitiveness of the same comment over and over has been part of the issue. And then the other part of the issue is that the meetings are quite long because there are lots of weighty issues on the agendas these days. And so the concern is that they're trying to expedite. It's not our view, it's not, it's a policy.
Rupert?
Well, I think it's too easy these days to crank out emails. You can have one person distribute an email to all of his friends and say, copy this and send this to FAMPO objective to this. So you're inundated with hundreds of emails. It's possible that you could be inundated with hundreds of emails on an issue, and you shouldn't be obligated to read every single one of them, especially when they're identical. And if anyone has got an issue that they really feel strongly about, and they want their words to be interpreted the way they were intended, they should come here and say it in person. And and another thing too, the text of all these emails is in the agenda, so all the people at the table have had a chance to read it already. And so the only people that are really benefiting from having the whole thing read are casual bystanders that are sitting on a row over there. And that's not enough reason to slow these meetings down and stretch them out interminably.
So actually, Tamara, and then,
This is Tamara Banks. I don't care if the meeting goes on 50 million years, the people have a right to be heard. And if that's emailed, they can be reviewed before, if they're redundancy, it can be summarized. But the people have a right to be heard. The people can't get here at 6 o'clock. Nobody even told me it was blocked off back here. And Mr. Ruby, you were looking yourself today. So if we're gonna have these meetings and we want more public input, no matter who we're doing it with, have them where people can make them accessible. Have them in the morning. People that I deal with, they don't have internet. They don't have email. So I get letters. And if I have to stay in this room for over an hour to read every last one, for the people who actually matter, who can't get here, who have no idea about this jargon, have no about that, then let's do it. Because in our own policies, it states that we're supposed to be soliciting comments anyway. And I don't know who's doing it. It's not in my concern who's doing it. But my concern is that the public need to be heard. They can't get here at 6 o'clock at night. The bus doesn't come here at 6 o'clock at night. So yes, the meetings are long. Yeah, I'm sorry that they're long, but they're long for purpose and for reason.
so Al was waiting, and then Ian.
Yeah, the other point that I would want to make is that we are asking for them to be 100% responsible and read what might be in the agenda as far as an email. And I can know from personal experience, since I've sent emails many times to Board of Supervisors, et cetera, that they have no idea what the heck I'm talking about because they have not taken the time to read something. And the other thing that's kind of potentially concerning regarding the summary that gets read is that you're hoping that someone's interpreting what you wrote and that they're getting the main points of what you intended to say. And me being a very wordy person, you probably have to kind of delve through everything over and over again to try to figure out what the hell I was trying to say.
Ian?
Would that be correct?
No, you're not the longest, we have longer letters than yours. I mean, for staff, we're caught between these two, right? And I'm not asking for any sympathy, I'm just explaining. So staff feel strongly that we shouldn't just have no comment. But there is a couple of other things we should think about. First thing is FAMPO has 4 committees, not 1. Okay, all 4 of those have a chance for public comment. You can't make it to 1, you can go to one of the others. And each one, we fixed this now, but each one of the FAMPO committees now has a formal representative on the policy committee. So there's no one. So for example, if you can't make this one, but you can go to the BPAC and make your comments, those comments can be captured by the representative of the policy committee, who can then go to the policy committee and say those comments as well. Second thing is, the tank is in the morning.
Mhm.
Nobody comes.
Where is it?
Right here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the meeting.
It's on the list that Cody sends out to say, here are the 4 meetings for the month, here are the dates, here are the times, here are the venues. And it's right here. 4 of our committees right where you're sitting now at that table as the public sits here at every one of the meetings. So they're not all in the evening. The TAC is during the day and people have come during the day.
So is that,
And of course, to Alan's point, the printed copy of what the person is summarizing is going to be according to that. attached in print copy to the agenda that's going to be in front of the people who's sitting at the table. So while Coley or someone is summarizing, the full text will be in front of them as well. I know they don't always read an email, they don't always read the print, but it's going to be in front of them in the meeting. When you get to that point on the agenda, some in red, but the actual full text is there. Hopefully they'll turn over the page and look at it while somebody can present.
So if I might make a suggestion and then,
But we're not arguing to stop public comment or to reduce it. We push back actually as staff.
We-
We would like at least a summary.
so I think it's safe to say we understand that, and I know I, for one, have the utmost faith in FAMPO staff. But my concern is just simple miscommunication that happens in the best of times. My other concern is the impact of specifically chosen words being read aloud. When you can read something versus when you hear it, it is a different thing. My undergrad was in film, so it's a communications degree. That's the basic of communications. So what I would suggest, and I realize we don't have the ability to impact this policy, but we have the ability to endorse and not endorse and maybe make suggestions. Am I wrong?
Okay, do what I said earlier, go to the policy committee and say, we don't like this, please stop it.
Right. And I'll be, that meeting is on Monday, right? So,
It's Monday, the 20th of November.
okay. It's just gonna be a long day. So I will be there. And what I would ask or suggest that I ask, or whatever the right phrase, look, it's been a long day today too, is what if, say, what I'm suggesting is we don't approve of this change. We understand the need to reduce redundancy and suggest a policy change with that focus.
First, you have to.
We were waiting on Dave.
I had another question, more clarifying before I think we get to that point.
Okay.
How many minutes is each speaker at PC, 3 or 5? 3. So there are letters that come in that take more than 3 minutes to read.
Yeah.
So this would have to, I mean, do you just stop, read for 3 minutes and then stop, and then you've lost all kind of, or your summary would actually be better if it's more than 3 minutes, one way?
So the distinction to me is, and I thought about this, the distinction to me is that if you tell me I have 3 minutes to communicate a message, I'm going to choose my words carefully to make sure they fit into those.
You do, but we get tons of letters.
Well, I know.
We've read them in here.
No,
We've read them.
absolutely. I'm talking in terms of fairness. They have an opportunity to choose their words as they want it. Does that make sense? And whereas if it's a summary, they lose that control of what they're trying to say. And that is my argument. Feel free to disagree.
We have not lost control because the full text is in the agenda.
Okay.
And anybody who's attending the meeting could have read it before they came. The people at the table have read it, we assume, before they came. So this summary is only benefiting people that just came in and unprepared.
I think more people come in unprepared than we give them credit for.
I don't think we should assume that.
I
would say I've attended a lot of meetings over the years,
Mhm.
and no committee I've ever attended does a better job of public communications in FAMPO, public outreach. Nobody, I've never seen a group that does better. And to just say you're going to summarize these emails is a trivial change in our policy compared to the overall policy. I'd like to move to the question.
So move on the question of, are we okay with splitting them up, or do we want to vote on them as a batch?
Sorry.
Are we okay with splitting up the two changes?
No, the motion stands as I made it.
To both? Okay,
The motion is to approve the changes.
both changes. And to clarify, if we do not approve this motion, there's still space for a motion to approve them individually. Is that correct?
Or you could propose an amendment to the motion, and you could then vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion after you voted on the amendment.
Okay, do I have an amendment on the motion?
I would amend that we can do them separately.
Do I need a second on the amendment? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Okay, so all in favor of separating the motions or separating the changes to separate motions, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. He said aye. So in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. That brings us, so we have now an amendment to the motion. So we have a motion so we can vote on testing my Roberts today.
Now you need to vote on the amended vote.
All right, so the amended motion to approve change 6B1, the change to the procedure on the emails. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it on endorsing the first change to the procedure regarding the emails. On the second motion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Or we split that we had an amendment to the motion, so they're now separate. Now they're separate motions. Yeah.
Let's.
I think I fused.
I'm sorry. I'm
No, which
catch-
first, which
So the first was, okay, we want to,
Motion or the second was to vote to approve the amendment.
right.
To endorse.
The chair, or to endorse it. The chair then proposed an amendment to Rupert's motion to vote on those amendments separately.
Al.
that was approved.
Al moved and then Kevin.
The
Yeah.
amendment was approved, which means that the motion is amended.
I just didn't know which one's first, which one's second.
Sorry.
Number one on the agenda, it was the first one.
Yeah,
Changes to the
that
public
was the
comment
email.
procedure for the PC, which is the email being read
Yeah.
aloud.
And we're looking at right now.
Vote on that to
Let's-
clarify? All right.
Six.
So let's have that. So voting to endorse the change regarding emails. Voting to endorse the change regarding emails, that's 6B1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
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 The chair is not clear. I suggest a roll call.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All
I'll give
right.
you some more work.
Tamara.
Y'all got me confused. Actually.
So in favor is in favor of the email. Aye is in favor of the email change. No is against the email change.
Leave it the way it is.
I'm gonna get the email.
Brett. Rupert.
Aye.
Glenn.
No.
Larry. Nicholas.
No.
David.
Aye in favor of the change.
Tim.
Aye.
Al.
No.
Kevin.
Aye.
It fails.
The motion fails.
Yeah.
No, we got him.
Yep.
Motion fails. 6B2, change to the public comment period. All in favor, say aye.
Reduce it from 30
To reduce it to 30/20. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. And the motion carries. All right. Now it gets more complex.
All right. Item 16. So before you is to endorse resolution 2412, amendment 1 of the Unified Planning Work Program. This is basically the document that outlines what jobs and tasks are FAMPO is conducting within a fiscal year. The amendment here is to
Move to endorse.
Okay, do we have a second?
Wow.
Do we have a sec? So I'm sorry.
People do.
Yes.
We have a motion, yes. So I read the email and I'm still a little confused. Can you give a 1-sentence summary? 2 sentences.
VDOT is requiring us to add this to our work plan so that it is shown in the public document versus being directed by the policy committee that is not documented elsewhere in our plan.
And this would move towards an RTA.
No, this is just enabling staff to be able to work on topics relating to an RTA.
Okay.
It's basically you,
Document production and planning.
Okay.
Adding it to the syllabus.
like a grocery.
That's the
Gotcha.
way I
All right.
applied it.
So we have a motion to endorse. Do we have a second?
Well, second.
All right, we have a second. Do we have any discussion?
Explain.
So it seems to me that this is just like, hey, let's talk about, do some research on an RTA, on a regional transit authority. It's worth,
You should empower the staff to be able to conduct research.
right,
They can't do any work if it's not on the UPW.
right.
And we still
So we're
have,
just saying,
and we still have 1/3 of the policy committee vote no, which would make me wonder a little, but anyway.
By my eyes, it seems like even if you oppose the RTA, this doesn't seem to do any harm.
it's not an endorsement of the RTA.
Right.
Just gotta do the research.
One way to block it, but
Yeah. So, any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? All right. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Endorsement has passed. All right, 6D, Regional Transportation Authority discussion, draft legislation and report.
I believe John gave a little bit of the info at your last meeting, so you have, those who were here do have a little bit. If you look at this map, this blue is the FAMPO region. This green is the area covered by the Richmond Transportation Authority called the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. The red is the geographical area covered by the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority, which has a funny name. CTAC is the acronym, which stands for some
Transportation Accountability Commission?
Yeah, the Transportation Accountability Commission. And it's everything except an accountability commission. It is a transportation authority which funds those big bridges and tunnels under the ocean. That's what that does. And then this one is the Northern Virginia one, which funds transportation projects there. So FAMPO is the hole in the donut. We're the region on the I-95 corridor and on the
In the Golden Crescent, we are the gap.
Yes.
Yeah, we are the only gap, right? We are the people who have the transportation shortcomings that they have elsewhere. We just don't have any of the money to fix it. We get from the federal government about 6 million a year, and all of our jurisdictions and our transit partners then bid essentially to get some of that money for their projects. And then John and Connor have to score those projects in terms of a methodology that FAMPO has approved to score projects, and we present the results to the committees at FAMPO, and ultimately the policy committee then decides yay or nay to give the money to those projects. That's what we have, but it's only 6 million a year, and if you talk to people at VDOT, they'll tell you that 6 million will build you a piece of sidewalk because stuff is so expensive. So the problem is that we're getting increasingly priced out of getting the job done because things just cost so much and we only get a limited amount of funds from the federal government. So we fit in that, we're the gap, we're the hole in the donut there. So that's what it looks like about us, right? The I-95 goes down here, we're that gap. And I just said there, a picture tells 1,000 words. Those are the transportation authorities. We have the congestion problems that they have and the other transportation accessibility problems that they have. I know Tamara is always pointing out the accessibility problems that we have in the region, but we don't have any of their size funds to deal with the problems. Next one. So if we have a transportation authority, we would need to choose a name for it. In the draft bill, I've just used that name, but you know, there are other suggestions. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it the Dave McLaughlin Transportation Fund or whatever. We have no particular view on that.
I'm not paying for it.
So we then have to decide on a board, the makeup of the board, because that has to be in the legislation. So we've suggested 2 representatives from each jurisdiction, 1 representative from the Virginia House, the Virginia Senate in the legislature. Somebody suggested a gubernatorial appointment. We've suggested no. We don't want to load this up with too many outside of the region people on the board. 1 representative from the CTB. Most authorities have some combination of those. And 4 others. One would be from VDOT, one would be from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. We suggest maybe the FAMPO administrator and the GWRC executive director, because of course, other than these, it's very possible none of those have transportation experience. They might, but that would be by luck. They don't require any transportation experience. So we felt like these non-voting people would be able to attend the board and make maps and talk about. Oh, next one. So, if coming to create a transportation authority, often the big fight is who gets to decide on where to spend the money. And so we've suggested using some of what is in the legislation that the other transportation authorities use, that we incorporate it. And one of the things that we can do is require that representatives of 4/5 of the population out there in the geographical area of the transportation authority have to approve spending of any funds on any projects, right? You can't get 4/5 of the representatives of the, sorry, say that the other way. If you can't get the representatives of at least 4/5 of the population to vote yes, you can't spend any money. So it prevents funds just being siphoned off by a minority of jurisdictions. With one caveat, a single jurisdiction can't veto the projects of 4 other jurisdictions. They can veto projects in their own jurisdiction, but they can't veto somebody else's jurisdiction, because if they're the only objector, you can't let them always veto every project just because they didn't get some of the money. So that's those two things are read together. I'll just finish this slide and then I'll come to your question. We've not put in an additional weighting of votes. Richmond has this, but Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads don't have that. It gets messy because then you have to get the region to decide who gets the most votes. And I can tell you what will happen. The 2 regions with the biggest population are going to want all the votes, right? Because that's the way things happen. So we don't want to open that can of worms. Some people do try to resist this because this will create drama. Because if you have to tell Caroline County that they're only going to get 1 vote and Spotsylvania is going to get 10 votes, it's going to be a fight, right? And I don't want to have to run that fight. Well,
But does 5C and Stafford constitute 4/5 of the population?
I don't know.
Man, it's close.
Not quite.
Not
It would be, if you look for so we're talking about the whole George Washington region, which was Caroline, King George. They have a combined just under 100,000. So Spotsy's at what, 140, Stafford's at 160. The rest of the jurisdictions are at 100,000. So it's not quite 4/5. It's close to just a little over a third.
So not quite. And then the final one is that we make sure, we've added this since the last policy committee, that you would divide the weighted population numbers equally between the members from a jurisdiction. So if there are 2 people from Spotsylvania, we would take the Spotsylvania population calculation, divide it in 2 and give each representative half, so that you make sure that you do this. Kevin, you had a question before I go any further.
Yes, it's kind of a little, I'll try to make it as quick as possible. If we have suggestions as to how to change this a bit, what kind of timeline do we have to do that?
So it's going back to the policy committee again for like the 3rd time, I think, on the 20th. I would suggest that you need to get in ahead of that policy committee meeting because it's the last one of the year.
So as CTAC, we can't really suggest changes.
We can. That's why I'm here. I would be here if I didn't want to allow you to suggest anything.
Okay.
But you can do that. But rather do it now than try and get it after the policy committee, because if they decide they're going to do this, then that's one outcome. If they decide they're not going to do it, that's a different outcome, and it's too late then to convince them what you want to do. Next one. So in addition to those checks and balances, we also put in projects submitted by localities or by state partners need to also have some sort of a prioritization process where these projects are scored, so that their incentive is there to put in good projects that are of real benefit and not just hey, I want my street upgraded, right? So you've got to show some benefit. And in order to show some benefit, we would then have a prioritization process. The others all have such a system. We've got one for CMAC and SDGB, that's congestion mitigation and air quality funding from the federal government, and surface transportation block group funding from the federal government. We already have to have a prioritization process for those, which we have, and you've seen it as we've brought it to you for comment. So we would have a similar one for this, where we use a methodology to score projects. And I've just emphasized that this is not just for roads, it's for transit, for bike paths, for sidewalks, for pedestrians, etc. It's any transportation mode and project, not for one in particular. So the gas tax, we originally were looking at and investigating, doing some of that research that you just voted on, to try to understand if there's a way that we could have a gas tax that would not have a significant impact on the region's economy. And initially we thought there was an ability to do it. And the idea was we look at what the gas taxes are around us. And if our gas tax is less, that gave a gap, so that if we had the gap money allocated to the Transportation Authority as a gas tax or a fuels tax, that wouldn't hurt businesses and folks in the region, because next door they would be paying the same gas tax. After doing all of this, and I must credit John for this, and I'm not even sure it's 100% right, because this is really complicated. The legislation on gas taxes and diesel taxes and the highway use fee for electric vehicles and other vehicles is very complicated, because it's been revised and changed and added to and so many times that it's really difficult to find that dollar, where it came from and where it's going. And John's done his best efforts to work with me to try and understand it. That wholesale fuels tax, some of it goes to fund the metro in Washington, D.C. Some of it is supposed to fund commuter rail, which it does via PRTC, and that is kind of here. But then what they did was the General Assembly in Virginia imposed this tax then on everybody. Because initially it was to fund VRE. That was the purpose this tax was set up. Sometime recently they changed this tax and put the same gas tax on every gas station and every place that sells diesel fuel in the Commonwealth. Even those, listen to this, even those who don't have commuter rail in their county are still paying this gas tax. And that's why it's so complicated, because some of it then goes into, where have you put it?
Yeah, it's,
Smart scale. It funds smart scale. Whatever's left over goes into fund smart scale.
but it gets broken up between the other authorities.
And then the other transportation authorities get to take it. It's very messy. But the simple understanding of it is the total gas tax in the state of Virginia is the same everywhere. And that's the thing, that's the litmus test for me that says we shouldn't have a gas tax or a fuels tax, because you are then going to make the fuel potentially more expensive here than anywhere else in the Commonwealth. Right? Maybe not, because the wholesaler can absorb that tax, but it's unlikely in my view, which means that we would pay higher for gas taxes here than elsewhere. And I don't think that's a good idea. It'll impact business and farms and all that kind of thing. So next slide. So we've decided to suggest to the policy committee not to have a gas tax.
We should save questions at the end, or?
It's up to the chairman.
Let's save it to the end just for the sake of time, because I do think this is going to have some discussion.
Sure, next one. So initially, these were taxes we researched, right? Where could the potential funding be for a transportation authority in this region? So we looked at what the other four, there are actually 4 transportation authorities do and how they raise their funds. So there's a whole range of taxes. And also we've looked at the 3 bills, pieces of legislation that have been submitted in the Virginia General Assembly to create a transportation authority for our region. All 3 failed. for various political reasons mostly, and because they didn't consult local people, and therefore local people objected, and so they didn't get enough votes. But anyway, so we first of all we listed all of them, then we went and dug into each one and said, well, how much money could this bring in? How much will it impact people, etc. And the policy committee at the last meeting asked us to find some additional information on these taxes. What are these taxes right now in, say, Stafford or King George County or whatever? So we again, John and myself and another guy, spent some time finding those. I reached out to the Deputy Secretary of Finance in Virginia, and he put us onto a senior person at VDOT who does the accounting to try to unpack this. Next slide. So this is not the slide I wanted. Get the next one. This is the one I wanted. So sorry, I'm changing the order of these slides quickly. The transit occupancy tax is a sensible tax for funding transportation because it's people that are moving through our region and staying over for a night. So they're using our roads, but none of their general taxes from their property or from their car end up with us. But they drive on our roads, so they cause congestion, they cause whatever else. So it might be appropriate to tax those folks because they're moving through our region. All the counties currently have a transit occupancy tax that varies. The blue is what they have now. The highest in the state that we can find currently is Virginia Beach and Emporia. They have 11%, which is quite a bit higher than us. Prince William County has got this general one, and then they pay 3% to the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. So in total, that's about 8% there. If we put 1% onto our local one, that's what it would look like. Sales tax, there's a standard 4.3% everywhere in the state of Virginia put on by the state, and a further 1% for local projects, but it's also standard across the state. John, why are you not sure? Oh, is the triangle because it's 2% instead of 1%? Or is that a different tax? Why is it not the 1 plus?
Sorry.
So why is there no green box here?
Oh, because their local has changed. It's combined with their 2% for their tourism districts. So it's an additional local tax that's in addition to their.
So the 2% purple includes the 1%
Yes.
green. Okay. Anyway, they have the highest in the state because of their local tourism tax. It's aimed to boost tourism resources in the area. So
That's Williamsburg, if you're.
they put on the extra tax. And then the Historic Triangle are paying their RTA taxes to where?
Just to Hampton Roads.
Okay. So they have a 7.7%. I know there's about a 0.7% to the CBTA. And just for your information, these are not just two localities. There are others that have this. We've just picked these as examples. So this is an example. It's not the only one. There's a whole bunch that have that. So in our region, the blue we already have, the green we already have. We're suggesting 0.5, which is half of the 1% up there, but it's 0.7 and 0.7 there. We're suggesting 0.5 so that we remain still less for our RTA than what they paid to the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. The Northern Virginia Transportation Authority also has 0.7, and I believe Hampton Roads also has 0.7. So the point is that we're trying to keep it less than their 0.7. So we've suggested 0.5 might be appropriate. It's a sliding scale, right? You pick what you can live with. So that's a suggestion. Next slide down. Well, let's look at the grantors tax. Currently, we do not have a grantors tax in our region at all. It's complicated also. I'm sorry to keep saying it's complicated, but this one is complicated because I read the legislation on the grantors tax because one of our jurisdictions said, oh, we have a grantor's tax. So I went and asked them some questions about it. Then I went and read the legislation again, and the legislation confuses the issue because the legislation on the recordation tax constantly refers to a grantor's tax. So it's confused the two names for these two different taxes. And so our jurisdictions staff, some of them are confused. What they actually have in place is a recordation tax. And some of them think it is a grantor's tax. It's not, it's a recordation tax. But the law is written in such a way that it's very confusing. So we do not have a grantor's tax in the region currently. Northern Virginia, it's at 15 cents per 100. Hampton Roads, it's 6 per 100. We've suggested 6 cents. Again, make it 5, make it 7, whatever. But by comparison to what other folks have. And now you can go back to the one back. Okay, so, no, back one. So we looked at a grantor's tax, transit occupancy tax, the state recordation tax, and a retail tax as possible options. Next slide. We've zeroed out all the fuel taxes because we think that that's going to price our gasoline higher than the gasoline in Richmond, say. If we keep a 0.5% retail tax, this is the amount of money it would bring in per year. That's 1 year. The transient occupancy tax brings in the lowest amount of money. It really doesn't bring in a lot. If you know what 1 mile of sidewalk costs, this is not going to get you anything, right? It's a very small amount for the cost currently that we have to pay for infrastructure. This is not going to do it. The grantor's tax, it's more money, 2.7 to 2.9 million a year. It increases over time. That's what the retail tax would be at 0.5%. This is the recordation tax. You currently pay that in our region, but we don't get the benefit of the cash because it's transferred to the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority, and they're using that money to build those bridges and tunnels down there, right? But it's taxed here, so the money is raised here. So what this does is it slightly increases the total recordation tax across the board and brings back a portion to our region for our transportation needs of about $15 million. Much of that you're already paying right now, you just don't know it, right? Well, it's based on transfer of property and so on. So if you sell or buy a property, that's happening. You just don't know that it's happening. It's bundled in with all those other fees and taxes that you see on that sheet that the lawyer gives you, right? It's there, but it goes to Hampton Roads, even if it's paid here currently. So when you look at that, you can see that the thing that brings in the most money is a sales tax and getting back the recordation tax. The numbers are small. And if you have to build a road widening that costs you, like Garrisonville Road widening is now costing $67 million, right? So it's going to take you decades.
You
have to find $67 million. It's going to take you decades to use this. We're suggesting you keep these 4 in, but it's up to other people to decide. We don't. Even our jurisdictions don't get a vote because the people who actually have to decide whether to implement this are the delegates and senators you all voted for yesterday. Those are the ones who are going to make this decision. FAMPO is involved because we want to try and influence their decision so that they don't implement it, and we have no say in the matter, which they tried last year, and they tried the year before, and they tried the year before that. And luckily, they didn't get enough votes. So what we're trying to do is have the discussion with you folks and with the policy committee members and the TAC members so that we formulate some thoughts on this, and we reach out to them and say, hey, if you're going to try this again, please don't do this, please don't do that, but we could live with this, right? So that we have some input into the process. That's the point of why we brought this to the FAMPO committees. Next slide. Okay, we've been through those. So what do we do with the money? Northern Virginia gives 30% of the money they get in back to the local jurisdiction that it comes from. So the money that's raised in Stafford towards the Transportation Authority, 30% of it would go back to Stafford, and Stafford can use it on their own transportation projects. So that if Dr. Young wants her bicycle and pedestrian path in the Garrisonville district, there is some money to build it, right? 70% stays in Northern Virginia in the Transportation Authority. Incidentally, all of these guys spoke at the Governor's Transportation Conference in October. They announced that they've reached a milestone in the amount of funding they've given back to the jurisdictions for their local projects of $1 billion. Since they've been running this Transportation Authority, they've given back $1 billion to all their counties. That's a lot of money. Central Virginia Transportation Authority, this is Richmond. So they give 50% of the money back to the locality that it comes from. 35% is retained in the authority for projects, and 15% they give directly to their transportation authority to run buses and their BRT line and so on and so on, right? There's been some debate at FAMPO committees, especially at the CTAC, about whether that's a good thing or not, whether you should give a finite percentage to transit or whether you should do it on the basis of what projects do you have. So it's not clear what FAMPO's view is on that.
You said project. This suggests that it cannot be used for operating expenses?
I'm not suggesting that. No.
Sorry.
I'm not suggesting that. No.
So we did say we're going to hold questions till the end, but Rupert, I'll put you on. Yeah.
Cool. CTAC is Hampton Roads. They, believe it or not, don't give any of the funds back to the local authority. They spend it all on regional projects. That's how they can fund that big tunnel under the bay and those big bridges. They don't give any money back to the localities. They keep it for the big projects. And they have funded something like 92% of those big tunnels and bridges out of the RTA funding. Next slide. So I had to take a stab at writing a piece of legislation to achieve this. So I included a 40% going back to the local counties or the city and 60% staying in the authority. But again, it's a sliding scale. So FAMPO can say how they feel about that and pick a different set of numbers. That's just a suggestion. Next slide. Finally, because these jurisdictions, I think because of the history of FAMPO, are concerned that the other county is going to get all the projects. In addition to the fact that you have to have a prioritization methodology and score projects, in addition to the fact that you've got weighted voting of a sense, in addition to all those other checks and balances you've already got in, there is the possibility that we could have FAMPO agree the first set of regional projects that need to be funded, whatever they are. And we put those in a memorandum that the 5 jurisdictions sign and say, we're going to fund these first, which gives some of the jurisdictions comfort that the money is not all going to go into one big project and that their county is going to get nothing out of it. So that would be a further way to allay those fears, is to have an MOU, to agree some projects, as long as there's some need that can be demonstrated. It's not just your favorite supervisor's favorite road that he wants or she wants widened. There must be some level of need demonstrated. I took a stab at just showing you what that could look like. Please don't take this as a suggestion. This is not a suggestion. Next slide. Oh, sorry, before we get there. The understanding is that we still try to get federal funds and smart scale funds for our projects. I'll explain some of those after the meeting, but you use the funds from the Transportation Authority as leverage, as local match, if you like, to get additional funds. Currently, if we were to get a federal grant for a larger project, build a new train station, build a bridge over the river, build a new interchange on Harrison Road, build a light rail system that somebody keeps reminding the policy committee about. That is a big ask, a lot of money. We can apply for a federal grant, but literally all the larger federal grants require 20% local match. The question is, where do you get 20% local match, right? Because the 20% local match could be $40 million, which no one's got like up their sleeve. So we would use the Transportation Authority to raise the $40 million to go after a federal grant for the other 80% or whatever. Smart scale leverage. We might then have to fully fund one or two projects when they fail to get a federal grant. Next slide. So this is an example, right? Just what I mean of getting an MOU with a bunch of projects. I'm not suggesting these should be the projects. I've just heard people talk about these projects, so I put them in. Some of the SWATC staff tell me that we have to have the lane on the I-95 lengthened down to exit 126. FAMPO has agreed that that's a project that needs funding. Or the Harrison Road interchange with the I-95 to alleviate the traffic on Route 3. We need to find other ways that you can get off the I-95. Stafford might want to fund the river crossing bridge that we're currently studying, or they have a western network of roads which would connect Enon Road to Centerport Parkway and Centerport Parkway to Mine Road and Courthouse Road. Fredericksburg might want to build their Gateway Boulevard extension that they've been talking about for years, or they might want this bridge as well. Caroline County, I know, wants the Ladysmith Bridge over the I-95 widened. It's only 2 lanes, and they've now widened the road east of the bridge to 4 lanes, but now the bridge is only 2 lanes, so it's going to be a bottleneck. King George County, Route 206 is a problem. Transit always needs funding. Nobody ever wants to fund transit. They like to have it available, but they don't want to pay for it, right? So somehow you've got to find a way to pay for transit. So I just suggested that. Now, I'm not saying these are the projects and this is the amount of money or anything. I'm just saying that some sort of a combination of projects could be agreed upon in advance so that when you sign off on this thing, you at least know initially what you're getting. You have votes to influence the decisions. There's a scoring methodology. We've weighted the voting, and you have a first list of projects that we're going to commit to funding with the money that comes in. Mr. Chair, I'm not going to say any more. Happy to take any questions.
All right, so first we got Dave. Nice enough to wait. You had questions?
Mine were answered, thank you.
Yours were answered. Rupert? You have
I
questions?
got my answer.
You got your answer.
I
Okay.
did say that operating expenses could be used.
Yes, I'm not saying they can't, no.
I'm sorry.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm saying that they very well could be included. The Richmond authority pays an amount over to their Richmond Transportation Authority, Greater Richmond GRTC, and they use some for operations and some for projects. It's up to them to decide how to use the money.
So, sorry.
Oh, I just had a question, for understanding. So we're the gap in the middle, correct?
Yes.
So neither one of those RTAs pays into us being the gap?
No. They raise taxes in their jurisdictions, which they keep themselves, and they spend the money on upgrading the transportation systems in their jurisdictions.
So we can't tax the people that come through? Is it illegal or we just don't do it?
It's illegal for us to tax anybody unless the General Assembly of Virginia approves the taxation. And even then, we don't collect the tax. It's done by the state, but they pay it then into a fund, which the transportation authority that's created in this region would administer with those representatives from each county and one senator and one member of the House, etc. Those people would administer the money. But the money is collected by the state because local jurisdictions are not allowed to just tax people. The state has to approve taxing.
The reason why I say, because we're, on one of your slides, you said that we, the tax that we pay on property, I think was,
Yes, the
that it goes to
recordation.
Hampton Roads Transit.
Correct.
So aren't we getting taxed for someone else's stuff?
Yes.
So how come we can't tax them for our stuff?
Well, Hampton Roads is not taxing us. The state of Virginia is taxing us, and they're giving the money over to Hampton Roads. So the state of Virginia can reverse that decision, but you need those senators and delegates that you voted for to go and do that. What this bill does is creates a new fund, so it gives them somewhere to put the money.
So without us being an RTA, we can't get the money.
Without an RTA approved by the state of Virginia, we cannot get even the recordation tax that is paid here. We can't get access to it. It's taken and given to Hampton Roads mostly by the state of Virginia.
That just, for me, it just seems
The more,
unfair.
the more John and I dig into this stuff, the more I think if only the public knew how this all works. Did you see that long, complicated spreadsheet? That's just one. That's just the gas tax, right? Each one of these has got funnies in the legislation that go back to political arrangements of the past, and I wasn't around. I can only tell you what the bill says now. How we got there, I don't know.
So question, this is Glenn. With regard to same comment, same topic, is there a defined time period that tax will continue, that the state initiated to go to Hampton Roads from Stafford? Or will it end? Or is it just it'll just continue forever?
There is no sunset.
It's
to that.
permanent.
Sunset to that? I thought that was just for the tunnel.
It's permanent. Unless the state changes the law again, it's been instated, and unless a formal decision is taken at the state level to change that, it will remain in place indefinitely.
So
The money used to go to the jurisdictions in the area, or half of it. Half of the money used to go to the jurisdictions in the area, and they stopped that and they gave it to Hampton Roads. I don't know when the sunset is on that. It's undefined in the bill.
So piggybacking off of that question, if we do develop an RTA here, does that increase the odds? I mean, I realize that it has to be legislative and you can't speak to the legislative matters, but to take an educated guess,
Yes.
would it increase the odds that that money comes back here if we have an RTA?
Not only does it increase the odds, the legislation
Could do.
that's in your pack specifies that it has to come back here.
Okay.
And in full disclosure, I used that section from the Senate bill that Senator McPike submitted last year to the Virginia legislature. So the reason it says $15 million is because that's the number he picked. So all credit to him, he's the one who did it. I've just borrowed it. The secret about writing legislation, I used to be a legislator. The secret to writing legislation is that you just use everybody else's stuff and combine it, and you just hide your sources, right? Say that's the secret to creativity too, is you just hide your sources, right?
My students thought.
I'm saying that a little bit tongue in cheek, but the point is all legislation is usually just a combination of previous pieces of legislation that you just borrow a paragraph from here and a paragraph from there. Well, this section comes from Senator McPike's bill because it's actually a good idea to get our money back. That's the principle. You can argue about the numbers, but the principle of getting back the recordation tax here, I think is a good one.
So my question now is, well, first off, does anyone else have any other questions?
Oh, could we do a tax district 1 mile each side of I-95?
You can.
And we all just go buy gas at 1.5 miles away from I-95?
That's exactly the problem.
Problem is word will get out.
The problem is that then nobody will buy the gas there, and those gas stations will go under, and they'll blame you.
Most people get off the interstate, don't go. What are you getting?
That's true, but if you have that kind of a firm boundary, word will get out. Like people will be like, oh, well, if you're stopping in Fredericksburg, make sure to go to the Wawa.
It'll take a while though.
Further down 7.
I'm going to stay out of that one.
Right.
Too many dangers for me to answer.
Any other questions? Because I do have some thoughts on movement.
There wasn't much mention of a highway mileage use tax.
So
I think it's the fairest tax of all.
So I think you're right, and I think that the federal government is going to do that. What they've done is that they have funded some pilot projects in a couple of states.
Minnesota,
There you go, Minnesota and where?
Oregon.
Oregon, to implement a mileage tax instead of a gas tax. And they want to see if it works, if it's can be administered properly, and if it brings in same amount of money, and what's the level and all that. So they funded trial periods, funded the staff to go and implement a trial to see what the result is and if it works. My guess is if it works, they're going to scrap all the gas taxes and shift them all to a mileage tax. But I think it's going to be done at the federal level, not at the state level. The state's first attempt was to create this highway use fee, which is an estimate. It's not a mile for mile count. It's an estimate of what the average person would drive.
11,600 miles.
And that's what the average person drives. And so they calculate the highway use fee for electric vehicles based on that.
And your MPG of 23.7, and whether or not your manufacturer had higher or lower, and if it's higher, you pay a little extra equation.
How complicated it is, very complicated, but it
Financial penalty for home body.
It was the first step in Virginia, and I think that was the right thing to do as well. Because if you have a vehicle that doesn't use fuel, gasoline or diesel, you still need roads to drive on, and someone's got to pay for those roads. So that the highway use fee is not a bad idea, but I think the federal government will take that over and make a mileage-based system once they've tested it somewhere and found that it works. So the cheapest way is give some money to Oregon and let them figure it out. And when they've figured it out, then we'll just apply it across the country. That's what I think the plan is. Don't quote me because I can't prove that, but the trials have started.
So you have no objection, obviously.
No, I think that's fair. It's fair that I pay for how many miles I've damaged the road surface.
So do we have other questions? Because I see a way to approach this. This is an action item, so I see a way to approach this. And if we don't have any further questions, I'd like to lay that out. If that's okay with everyone. Okay, so the way I see it, and I'm open to other suggestions, but the way I see it is we should first look for a motion to endorse this idea of the policy committee preparing something for the legislature. That because if we endorse that idea, then maybe if we have other ideas, we can then go into those. But if we don't endorse that idea, then there's no point in further discussion. We okay with that? Do I have a motion for that aforementioned endorsement?
I second it. It's Glenn.
Regional Transportation Authority.
Okay. So we have a motion to endorse, and was that a second on the phone?
Yeah, Glenn seconded.
All right. Do we have
Yes.
further discussion? Rupert.
I think it's a lousy idea. In a nutshell, the problem to me is not where the money's coming from, but how the money's being spent. And we've got a lousy track record over the last 60 years or so of what we've been doing with our transportation money. And unless we can see some policy change to accompany the transportation authority, I see there's no point in throwing more good money after bad. All we've done is widened and added roads and beltways. We've encouraged suburban sprawl. We've encouraged long distance commuting. We've crept up the planet with the air pollution that's been caused by that. And I don't think we should keep on doing it. That's exactly what we're going to do right here. We have the opportunity to go ahead and make the change, to getting back to pedestrian-oriented communities. But there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. It's probably going to be just more of the same. So until we have a change of philosophy, I say don't do it.
So my question for Ian, an RTA, if we have an RTA, now I recognize that well, no, I don't know the full situation here, but if we were to pursue a broader public transit system, because I think that's something you would approve of, right? Rupert, is more transit over cars, right?
No.
No, okay.
only transits in pedestrian-oriented areas.
Okay.
I'm not going to suggest doing transit to the suburbs. Transit
Mhm.
induced sprawl is just as bad or maybe worse than automobile induced sprawl.
Well, then I still have the question though, if we have an RTA, could the money produced by, well, collected by an RTA be put towards transit?
Yes.
Okay.
Even put it on the list of potential uses.
I just wanted to clarify.
Right now, it is 15% of every dollar that comes in to the Richmond RTA goes straight to transit.
Right.
Northern Virginia also, but they're complicated because
Metros.
Northern Virginia Transportation Authority is not allowed to fund operations. They're only allowed to fund infrastructure.
Oh, great.
So but that was, you see, that was written into the bill, right? Which is why I'm trying to get us to read a bill and think about it so that before they vote on it, we can send comments and say, don't do that, don't do this, don't do this other thing. So that's a very bad mistake, I think, is to say you will not ever fund transit operations with the money, because then forever after, until you get someone to vote in the legislature to change that, you're screwed. You can only fund a new bus or roadways. You can't fund transit operations. So I think that's a mistake.
Question going back to the Richmond one.
Yes.
Right now, they're one of 4 counties.
Yes, Fredericktown City also does.
Yeah, exactly. So they're getting, what was it, 50% back?
50%. Yeah.
What is maybe that's another subject. I'll bring it up another time. VDOT's budget here in our court.
I don't know.
Okay. So maybe, yes.
And I'm new, so please forgive me. So this means this proposal here, the gas and diesel tax is off the table.
Yes.
On the increase in the sales tax, the resale sales tax,
Yes.
over a 5-year period, you want to increase revenues by 161 million, roughly, when you
Including
go to
all
the blue
of
chart, to recapture 75 million. That the 15 million a year that we don't get, that
No. The goal is not of this whole effort is not just to get back
I understand that.
tax. The goal is to fund transportation projects because we're lagging. We just don't have enough money.
See, my key is I look at raising the sales tax 1%. In these times is 0.5%.
Let's go back to the slide, please. Because that's the key slide. If you misunderstand that slide, then it all goes to hell very quickly. So let's go back here.
Yeah.
This one, start with this one. So this is half. And
Okay.
I've heard public officials quoting us saying 1%. It's never been 1%. And luckily for me, all of the slides we've shown are on the website. So nobody can, we've not changed anything. And we also have a recording of all the meetings. But the point is, it's always been suggested to be 0.5%, never 1%. Nobody ever suggested 1%. Somebody started saying that out there in the public. But if you go back and look in the records, we've never said that. We've always said 0.5. And the reason we've said 0.5 is because the people next door have 0.7. So we want to be a bit below them so that our region has a slightly less tax than next door. That's why 0.5. We would be stupid to make it higher than 0.7 because then we're higher than our neighbors.
Now,
But we're suggesting even lower than our neighbors at 0.5.
at what point in the future, who would vote or who has the authority to make any adjustments in these figures?
Same people that voted to start it.
In other words, so I don't,
State legislation.
The policy.
The General Assembly.
so in other words, any future increases would have to be approved by Richmond.
Yes, and it's unlikely that they would make changes easily. The one in Northern Virginia and one in Hampton Roads have been around a long time, and the only they have made changes. They've seen that a problem develops. Maybe the tax you thought was going to work doesn't work so well, or maybe the Hampton Roads one was ruled unconstitutional, I think, because it allowed the local authority to raise the taxes, and that's not allowed. The state has to raise the taxes. And so they had to redo the Hampton Roads one to bring it in line with constitutional principles, which say that only the state can charge those taxes in Virginia. So the state charges those taxes in the Hampton Roads areas and then gives the money into the fund for them to use, which is why the name got so funny. It had a previous name. They repealed that bill and instituted the one that they have now. The Northern Virginia one's been around about 12 years, I think.
Actually, Northern Virginia's had an authority since at least the 80s.
Okay.
In some guys, and then it's not the same revenue, but it's been evolved.
It's been changed and updated. So they do get changed and updated, but it's not like every year. It's like 10 years go by, 15 years go by, and then they say there's a small problem with it, and then they lobby for a change. But the whole General Assembly would have to vote for that change. You can't just, FAMPO can't make any changes.
Thank you for clarifying that.
So we have a motion on the table to endorse the idea of an RTA. And we have a second, I believe. Oh, you have further discussion?
So we're just endorsing the concept of an RTA.
Yes.
That,
And if we do this, I would like to discuss some of the details. But this is just the general concept of the RTA. For the policy committee to suggest to the legislature.
okay.
Is that, we all on the same page there? No.
Say that one more time.
So we're suggesting a suggestion, basically, which is we're suggesting to the policy committee that they suggest to the legislature some sort of structure to an RTA. I would like to have discussion, if everyone's game, about some of the aspects of that, some of the details of that structure, but that would be a separate motion.
So the first motion is just, do you like the idea, yes or no? And then he wants to discuss details of the idea after that.
Do we have any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, in the opinion of the chair, the motion carries. So the next thing, if everyone's okay, I was at the policy committee as the CTAC representative, and so I heard Ian's presentation last month, and it gets better every time. I'm actually not kidding about that. It does get better every time. There were some clarifications that made more sense this time around. And I had thoughts about the structure. So could we look at the voting structure? And these could be superfluous. Feel free to shout me down if these are superfluous. And just something that we think the policy committee should decide or the legislature should decide. But here are the thoughts I had. Can I go to I think it's the next slide actually that I'm looking at, when talking about the veto power and et cetera? Yes. So my concern is with the dynamics of this area, of the, I think you know where I'm going on this, is the how this sets up the veto power. So here's my hypothetical. There's a project like we've talked about, the bridge, the potential for a river crossing. There's a project that goes, if it goes from Stafford to Spotsy, according to this structure, Spotsy could nix it.
Mhm.
Correct?
That's fair.
If it isn't
Fredericksburg can't.
Stafford, Spotsy could veto it, yes.
So my question becomes,
Which is the land of Spotsy.
right? How do I say this? My question.
That has actually happened without an authority.
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that, and that's why I thought of this is in any sort of democratic institution, there's an opportunity for a veto override. Could we, in the best interests of the jurisdiction? So I had two thoughts. First thought is, when it talks about representatives of the jurisdictions covering 4 to 5, you mentioned at the bottom, population totals for white would be split between 2 members. Here's my suggestion. Right. My suggestion is instead have 3 per jurisdiction and the majority carries. And but the majority vote of each jurisdiction. Sorry.
do you mean by the majority?
Majority of each jurisdiction. So if there's 3 members from Stafford and 1 member of Stafford doesn't like it, that member of Stafford doesn't have the veto unless it gets he or she gets another member of the Stafford jurisdiction representation to veto.
I understand the point. I think though that would already happen because you need 4/5, right? So let's say there are 2 members from Stafford and the 1 votes no.
Right.
They would have half the population of Stafford, which is about 70 or 80,000.
80,000, yeah.
80,000 people.
Mhm.
Don't think that's enough to cover the 4/5, or is it? We'd have to run.
It gets close.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's why I
It's gonna
have
go
that
from
concern.
getting close to being a definite if the population projections
But remember,
track.
step 2, you can only veto a project in your own jurisdiction. You can't veto a project in somebody else's jurisdiction. So it would only be a project which physically touches the land of that jurisdiction.
If Stafford and Spotsy want to build a bridge, Fredericksburg can't veto it.
Right.
And if it's multiple jurisdictions involved for the
Unless-
project,
On the land of Fredericksburg. What?
if there are multiple jurisdictions involved in the regional project, then could any of those particular jurisdictions try to veto it?
Yeah, so that Al is getting at my basic point, which is if you have something, let's say you have something that somehow goes Stafford, Fredericksburg, Spotsy. Stafford and Fredericksburg are on board, but Spotsy doesn't want to raise the taxes.
Well, that's what we're at now.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
It's not gonna change.
90% of these projects are gonna be in your county.
So common law dictates that you can't tell me what to do with my stuff, right? That's just been since Roman times, Roman Dutch law. We have in South Africa. So common law just says, you can't take my stuff. So what all this is doing is saying, I can stop you only if you touch my stuff. If you don't touch my stuff, then I don't have that veto right.
Okay.
So it is a caveat to the 4/5. You need 4/5 of the population to say yes. But if the remaining 1/5 is a county or a city that is not impacted by the project by having it touch their land, they can't veto it. So it would carry even though you don't have, it's absolutely 4/5. If you've got like 10,000 people less than the 4/5, but the only person voting no or the only jurisdiction voting no, the project does not touch their land, then their veto is cancelled by this.
They're yes by default unless the project
I can
is-
see the city having issues with that.
The city, you mean this,
It-
explain an example?
It dulls their teeth down a little bit,
I mean, it works both ways, right?
which is fine with me, but, I'm just saying.
Well, that's why I would bring up going back to the idea of the 3 members. And then if 2 of the 3, then the entire jurisdiction counts towards the 4/5. Does that make sense?
I mean, you can do it that way, yes.
It was an idea I had, if we're not interested.
The question is,
There's not gonna be a lot of projects that involve more than one jurisdiction, other than a bridge across the river.
Yeah. But that's kind of our most.
But you have Spotsylvania.
you know what the other,
But if you got spots being,
do you know what the other RTA is?
guy, but we're over there being assholes about it, then somebody else punches. I'll be honest with you. I'm a regional guy,
Yeah.
and maybe we need to work on our politicians over in spots.
We appreciate having you on our committee.
All right, thanks.
The other RTAs, what they do is they only have 1 person per jurisdiction that represents. And so it either has to be the mayor or the chairman of the
CTAC
supervisors.
doesn't. They have a multi-person makeup of theirs. Theirs bases on like they get.
Oh, yeah, that's
specify. Yeah.
thing. But Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, it's one person from each jurisdiction. And so they have to caucus among themselves beforehand and decide what to tell the one.
Spotsy and Stafford are gonna be the players in that because of the population thing, the way that's written.
Well, any other
Kind of like
motion,
California in New York.
all the amendments I've heard to this all suggest giving Stafford and Spotsy even more power, which I think is bordering on too much. right? This already gives them significant amount of power, but it does have some limits. It's built in one or two limits. And if you give them even more power, I'll be afraid that it'll fall apart into acrimonious
I agree.
French war.
I agree, yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But you gotta move the thing forward, I think. I mean, we've been sitting here, every road we travel on, it was ridden by Stonewall Jackson on a horse. Okay, we have not built any new roads around here since 1972. Other than the developers have built new roads, but VDOT hadn't.
Well, they did build the bridge over the I-95.
I was just wondering if someone raises the point or the question that granted that the project may not touch their soil, but it could still very much impact what happens in their jurisdiction.
Well, the wording, yeah, the word is in, and this is just a summary. The actual legislation, which you got as well, elaborates on that, but it's in your jurisdiction. Doesn't say impacts your jurisdiction.
Right.
Because everything we do impacts 20 other people. I mean, you can't do anything anymore without impacting somebody.
It's the generality of the interstate commerce clause. Can we pull up the sample legislation?
Yes. It's also in your packet.
I'm sorry, I didn't print everything off.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
it's
in
not,
the.
it's not printed off.
Oh,
So,
okay.
So that's just a memo, and then there it starts. So some of this is taken from McPike's bill, and some of it is a combination of what other transportation authorities have done in Richmond and Hampton Roads and Northern Virginia. There it is. The first section just establishes a fund, which is the thing that you were talking about. What do we do with, how do we get the money? Well, it creates the fund to put the money in so that we get back the recordation tax and put it in the fund.
How does capitalization work in these things? I'm sorry.
So this is the combination of the authority, what you saw on the slides, 2 members, et cetera, et cetera. Ex officio, these are non-voting, right? And then staff, that's just nonsense if you need staff back. So decisions, an affirmative vote of those present and voting, whose votes represent at least 4/5 of the population embraced by the authority. And here, this is new. Population totals shall be split in equal parts between the representatives of the same county or city. So that's how you get to the full. Then there's the budget and the expenses. Powers of the authority. One of the powers the authority would have would be to raise bonds against the proven income of the authority. So you need to build the bridge, and you've got 50 million, and the bridge is going to cost 150 million, but you are getting 30 million every year. You can amortize it over time. You can own property.
Well, do we want to endorse the draft legislation?
How to use the money, what you can spend it on, etc.
Because this is, we're still working on an action item. We've endorsed the general idea of an RTA. Is anyone comfortable with endorsing the draft legislation as the structure is, or do we want to hold off on that?
Well, I imagine it's gonna be changed and modified over time before it gets actually voted upon by the policy committee.
I think, as my understanding, they have one meeting before they have to submit something to legislature before the legislature has to submit bills. Is that correct?
So the people that were elected yesterday take office on the 1st of January. They're allowed to start submitting bills from, I believe, the 1st of December this year. So even before they're sworn in, they can submit. My intention to propose this legislation is here, and they send a draft text, which allows the staff to fix the wording, because sometimes they're not, well put together bills and they need some editing. And they can submit legislation from, I think, the 1st of December until about mid-January. And then the process starts to debate those bills, to amend those bills, and to then eventually vote for them in the Senate, vote for them in the House, and send them to the governor to sign. So the process will start roughly the 1st of December to the 15th of January. So before the policy committee meeting in January, the window to submit bills will have closed. However, there will still be time to amend the bills that have been submitted in committees. So it's not a closed door, but you can't bring in new legislation after about the 15th of January. I forget what the exact date is. And then you have to go to the people who submitted the bill and say, okay, we don't like clause 3, please change it.
So for best results, we really do have to have an idea of what we want to suggest to the policy committee today.
And this is part of the reason, this is part of the reason I started talking about this 3 or 4 months ago, because I knew we're going to get to January, somebody's going to have submitted a bill, we're not going to like it at all, and it's going to be really hard to convince them to change everything like then. But if we can go to them now with a rough draft and say, something along these lines we could live with, how about this? Hopefully we'll get a better draft. There's still no guarantee because we have no control over the elected officials once they're elected. They can anything. At least we can publicly propose stuff, talk to them privately, try to get whatever we think is a good idea.
Do we have any liaisons with our legislators through?
I was instructed by the chair of the policy committee today to please invite them to the next policy meeting. The ones from our region. So not all.
And these are
not all 140. I've only invited like the 10 from our region.
So, and these are the representatives elect, not the current ones.
We've invited the elect ones because the current ones don't have a window to submit any legislation anymore, unless they've been re-elected. So I've taken the Tara Durans, the Senator McPikes, the Josh Coles,
He lost.
the Paul what?
McPike lost.
The Paul Mildays, all of them. So we've invited them. Some can't make it. One has confirmed they are coming.
Who's that?
Josh Cole. But I only sent them out this afternoon, so we'll get replies tomorrow.
I mean, I would, being that in order for the legislature to ultimately possibly approve it, yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely essential that everyone's on board together. So working with whoever, whether it's a senator or a delegate, is going to be crucial, especially since that's the basic reason that they've never been passed in the past.
So the first step is we invited them all to our meeting. Say, hey, we're going to talk about this thing. Would you like to come? And we'll see if they arrive. And then literally the policy committee members can say to them directly, hey, could you do this and not this other thing? Not that they're necessarily going to endorse the way it's written here. The policy committee may want to change this, right? This is the draft. And then, as you say, it improves every time we show it. We think of something else and we fix it. So I think that's a better way of frankly building legislation where we all think, we all tweak, we change a word, we change a percentage, we fix something, and then by the time it gets to the end, more or less, it's something we can live with.
So my question to CTAC right now is, are we comfortable having just endorsed the idea of an RTA? Do we want to send the policy committee any details?
So we have something. He's saying that we can still add, subtract, do stuff later.
Okay.
To just get the ball rolling, I'm saying.
So my understanding is that with how I see it is with just the endorsement, they're going to see the draft anyway, right? The policy committee is going to see the draft that you showed us anyway, right?
No.
So do we want, I think there's a question of we can endorse the draft, or we can just say, hey, look, we've endorsed the idea of an RTA. That's good enough. So if anyone has a motion on either of those.
I think you already had a motion.
Are you adding an agenda item?
No. Well, so I view this as germane to 6D.
Yeah.
Is because draft legislation is on the agenda.
You've already endorsed to
We've
support
already-
the
we've
structure of the
already
RTA
got a bit of business.
to
Well, so if you look at item 6D, it says, Regional Transportation Authority discussion, draft legislation report. We had the report, we endorsed the Regional Transportation Authority. To me, there is still room on that agenda item to endorse draft legislation, if we so choose. If we don't so choose, which is fine, then we don't so choose. So do I have,
I'll make a motion that we endorse the draft legislation.
okay, do I have a second? A second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay,
I
hearing,
mean, just for the, let's just capture how many nays there were.
I got it. I heard 2 no's.
Two.
Yeah. But in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, so we've endorsed the draft. And we can move on to 6E. This is not an action item, is that correct?
That's correct. I'll give you the 30-second version. Basically, due to changes into how Virginia's allocating smart scale, certain corridors will only be eligible for certain amounts of funds. Currently, Route 3 would not be eligible for one of the big pots of money, which requires that the route be a corridor of statewide significance. We are looking to actually appeal to VTrans to actually amend their list of corridors of statewide significance to include Route 3. Currently, we have Route 1, Route 17, and 95, and that's it. So we are trying to add Route 3 to that because chances are if any improvements are going to happen on Route 3, it's going to take a significant amount of funds, and therefore we want to make sure that Route 3 is eligible for that.
So what,
That's the reason why.
In the most recent round of proposed smart scale changes for the, now I'm blanking on the acronym, high priority corridors, you have to be on the, a corridor of statewide significance.
I got that part, but why do we want this to be applied to Route 3?
Because it's
Major
a
artery.
pretty major corridor for both our region and actually extending out into Culpeper and down the northern neck as well. But for us to be able to touch those pot of funds, VTrans has to have it on a checkbox that it's a high priority corridor or a corridor of statewide significance, which there's a list. If you scroll down, you have to check a certain amount of things.
Somebody want to widen Route 3?
Just to be able to apply for any amount of funds for the high priority corridors.
So this is just a change.
So for any infrastructure, it's like any infrastructure on the corridor.
so whether you want to fill a pothole versus,
Widening it, actually building a bus facility, it could be any.
bike lanes?
Pedestrian crossing.
Yeah, bike lanes. But they have to be large projects because smart scale for FAMPO, smart scale projects have to now be bigger than they used to be.
Right.
The state voted for that, which I think is a travesty, but anyway, that's on the state side.
And in some of this research that the staff is doing, we are showing that Route 17 carries the bulk of the traffic, particularly coming from kind of Culpeper North, because it's a foreign or free trade zone up there, the inland ports up there. But what you're doing is actually seeing a large amount of traffic splitting off earlier and coming down Route 3, because if they're heading south, that's their route that they are slowly increasing. So it's anywhere between out of 5 trucks that are coming down route or coming from that area, 4 of them are going on Route 17, one's going to Route 3, but then you start dividing it up. It's actually it's getting closer to 3 to 1 in some spots, and seeing how traffic kind of heavy truck traffic actually dissipates as it's coming closer to 95 on Route 17, while it increases on Route 3. So there's some freight things that are going on, but it's more than just that. It's just general transportation pattern we're looking on it. So if you're looking at Route 3 and Route 17, Route 17 is a corridor of state road significance. It's bigger, but Route 3 is not too far behind.
So is this something that is on the radar policy committee? Well, no,
Yeah.
this was mentioned at the last meeting.
Yeah.
So I'm actually a little confused why it's not an action item. What, do we not?
Because it's still in development by staff.
Oh, okay, so it's just an update.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, to clarify, this is a copy of the draft discussion document that went to the TAC.
Okay.
we are turning it into a slightly more full memo to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, which we're going to present to the policy committee at their next meeting. So we won't have time to bring the final version back to you again before the policy committee decides to send this on. So we thought the best thing to do is to bring you the draft that went with the TAC. So at least you can understand the idea, have some comments on the idea, and your comments might be able to be included in the draft document which we're busy typing. It's basically this document with some additional maps and some additional data to back up the case. We have to make a case to the Commonwealth Transportation Board to add this to the corridors of statewide significance, because FAMPO is now being restricted to apply for big regional projects for funding that are on an existing corridor of statewide significance. So that means it's going to be hard to get funding for projects on Route 3. So we're trying to add Route 3. Currently, 17 and 17 business are corridors of statewide significance. Route 1, US 1 is a corridor of statewide significance. I-95 is a corridor of statewide significance. And I forget if there are any others.
That's it.
That's it. And we want to add Route 3 because it's the next big congested corridor in the region.
Is 610 not?
No.
Or
There's no significance there.
No, I get
No,
that. It's just what
no.
we're talking about
It's a,
in terms of congestion.
in this case with Smart Scale, they've added very specific language that once you interpret it that you have to apply for a certain amount of certain types of projects, and they have to be on certain corridors. We're kind of like it's basically we can touch 17, 1, or 95, and that's it.
Okay.
It kind of boxes it in, and we're like, we kind of have a big one that's off the list. This is the first big one. They haven't amended their corridor of statewide significance in over 10 years.
Okay.
So that's why we're like, hey, pay attention to this.
Anyone have comments? This seems logical to me.
So that was the idea. It's the same thing we've been doing in the past. The only reason we would want to put this on the corridor of statewide significance is because we want to do something to expand capacity. We want to widen it, or, widen bridges or widen the highways. And that's what's gotten us into this mess in the past. It's just, paving our way out of congestion. It's unsustainable. So there's no reason whatsoever to do it.
Because situations become worse if we don't.
Yeah.
Situations, the reality of the situation is that the conditions will worsen if nothing is done. Well, I don't think we're, as much as I agree.
did not say nothing being done. If you have two.
Well, projects is what I
You
meant.
have two cities that have got a lot of traffic between them. You don't have to put down more asphalt. You can put down, a bus lane or a railway. There are other options. The option that we've been following for the last 60 years is not working. That should be obvious to everybody.
If you don't mind. So basically and this is for understanding, if we make this a corridor, and we know how it takes millions of years to get stuff done around here. If we make it a corridor now, then if we do decide to expand, or we do decide to add bus lanes, it's considered a corridor, so we'll get the money to do it. Is that how I'm
Yes.
understanding it? Then I'm for it. Come on, Mr. Drew, let's speak for it.
I thought you were a transit person.
I am a transit person,
You're not
but
sure.
I mean, buses aren't airplanes. Where they're gonna go on? So let's go ahead and make this a corridor. When we're ready to put a bus lane, they'll give us money because it is a corridor. We need stuff. Come on. We need stuff. If we do this
You
now,
don't need asphalt.
we don't need congestion, but nobody's giving transit any money to buy buses, to open up roads. So let's get this done now, and then again, like we always do,
This
worry
work-
about it when we get
This
there.
works exactly against what you're proposing.
No, it's not. What they're saying is
You're encouraging people to take cars instead of transit.
No, I'm encouraging people to take get on the bus so we can get from point A to point B. People are working outside this area because there's no jobs here. So yeah, let's build some roads so we can get them out the community, right? Got a road, build it, drive on it, get out the community. Buses, If people live here, know that there's a viable transportation system, they're gonna come here to live because there's a viable transportation system. I don't wanna drive, I'd rather hop on a bus and go. But we can't do that because again, buses are buses, not airplanes. They're not in the air, they're on the roads. So make this a corridor, let them fix up these streets for when it's time. We'll talk about getting bus lanes, we'll talk about getting more buses.
You do know this problem could be solved by congestion pricing and not
And
put
you
down.
do know that as somebody with a limited income, congestion pricing will kill them. So what they're gonna end up doing, they're gonna end up moving out of here because they don't wanna do the congestion pricing.
Congestion pricing would pay for transit. You have free
So,
transit.
so I'm gonna just, butt in here as it is 5 minutes to 8 and I, got an hour of sleep last night. I would like to go home. And frankly, this is an ongoing discussion that we have. I think, I'd like to think that we share some goals, even if we have differences in terms of how to achieve those goals. But we do share some goals. And this is not an action item. I think you've gotten our comments. Do you feel you've gotten our comments, Ian? Okay. Then I'd like to move on to the next item. Is that okay with everyone? All right. And I'll try to be as quick as possible because this one's my fault. Well, sort of. So again, to harp, to beat a dead horse, the last month we didn't have a quorum, except for our very few, partially because of the current quorum rules. We had 5 people, but we did not have 5 people from 2 different jurisdictions. Sorry?
In the room.
In the room. Yes, the current bylaws require that we have 2 different jurisdictions in the room, at least 5 people. What, one idea that was suggested that I saw the logic in, which means it's probably wrong if I saw the logic, but, is to propose change that authorizes to, in an emergency, which is emergency basically being, we have 5 people here, but 4 of them are at large. Take into account that they're at large, their actual residence means that even for at large members, they're probably representing the interests of their jurisdiction. And therefore amend the bylaws to take into account at large residents should quorum qualifications not be met. We're still looking for the ideal of people from 2 different jurisdictions, at least 2 different jurisdictions, preferably all 5. Is it 5 jurisdictions?
Yes.
All 5 jurisdictions, but I've not seen that. But at least 2 jurisdictions. But if we do not meet that, if we don't meet that in person, we start looking at large folks and where they live. That sounds scary.
Sounds like you're.
FAMPO, just to be clear, FAMPO, the jurisdictions that are members of FAMPO do not include the 5. It includes only 3.
Right.
We have, as a rule, included people from the other jurisdictions anyway to be good neighbors. But they're not formally members of FAMPO. We bring them in as members of the TAC, as members of the CTAC, as whatever else. But the actual jurisdictions of FAMPO are the 3. Pennsylvania and the city of Princeton.
So this amendment would still would apply only to those 3 at-large members from those 3 jurisdictions: Spotsy, Stafford, and
They're
Fredericksburg.
not appointed by the jurisdictions, they're at large.
Right.
That's the difference.
No, that is a difference, and I understand that. Maybe we could even add something where like this can't happen 2 months in a row, but this is kind of an in a pinch exception.
So you're gonna bring forth some proposed language that we can get to? Is it up or?
This is a, I wanted to bring this up. I didn't want to ambush anyone with this. This is something we would vote on next meeting. And so this is what I was thinking. If anyone has language that they want to propose, they can propose language. Otherwise I can, or maybe John, I don't know if you want to, who should write the language here?
I can take a stab at it and you can use the edit pin of death on me.
All right. Or at least comatose state.
Times in the past, say 2 years.
Most meetings. I'll be honest, my motivation here is I don't really like coming down here to not have a meeting.
Yeah.
Might have been misunderstood.
Yeah.
Most meetings you've had a quorum.
Yes.
Yes, most meetings we've had a quorum.
One meeting.
In the last 18 months, last one was the only one, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but we have 5 meetings. We really almost have, per year, we actually have a grouping of 5 meetings, and then we have a break halfway through. So the question is, if there's an issue with quorum on one of the 5, that you have to have a huge long list of items to get through.
Yeah, because tonight it is 8 o'clock because we didn't handle a bunch of things last month that we should have handled last month.
In the room can't be interpreted as on the phone. 'Cause the phone is-
That's the other.
So I was about to say that there is another way to loosen it up and help you with the problem, and that is to include online people who are members, formal
Right.
voted on members as part of the quorum. Just because they can't get to, like the gentleman who's in DC right now is elected to be a board member of the CTAC. You might want to change the bylaws to say that his vote counts as part of the quorum. Just because he's not physically in the room, but he's still participating for 2 hours and giving his ideas, is still a valuable asset. And you might want to change your bylaw to say, hey, he can be part of the quorum, just because he's not physically in the room doesn't. But you have to have a few people in the room, otherwise it becomes a little.
So we could make it so maybe a limit of 1 member online counts in regards to the quorum. So if we have 4 people here and they're all from Stafford, and then there's 1 person from Spotsy online, then that would count.
Before we go there, I think we need to, code 2.2, 37 Code of Virginia, what does that allow? It may not be permitted.
Oh, that's a really good point. And that's actually probably where my hesitance, why I didn't go with the virtual route.
Know that, it's
Yes,
probably
so
very specific.
recently changed the PAC bylaws to allow for that, so.
Not the same thing. The fact bylaw will change allow for the whole meeting to be online.
Oh, yeah, but sorry, I was thinking about the same.
I would think this is a
It's
lesser
possible
degree, so.
To vote on that, you just have to state it in your bylaw.
Just make sure we're in accordance with the code.
No, absolutely. And I'm also, like I said, this is an emergency option. I'm willing to go with limits, like maybe this only happens twice, this can only happen twice a year or something about, it's just, it's frustrating to drive down here, especially with the road construction, get here and then say, oh, we're not actually having a meeting.
I suggest, Chairman, and we're going to stop, so it's
Mhm.
a suggestion that you ask Scott, mostly John, but Scott,
Yeah.
like 2 or maybe 3 options.
We had talked about that. Yeah, we talked about that after the last policy meeting.
At the next meeting, you can then vote. Also gives them time for Cody to check the code, to make sure that they're compliant. And then you have 2 options that are compliant, and you can vote on which one you like the best next meeting.
Are we all happy with that?
Good.
All right, that is,
Fine, except it was probably my fault because I forgot about it. And all you do is, oh.
sorry.
Yeah,
I actually forgot about a
Saturday
policy
night.
committee meeting, though. That's bad.
Only next time.
Will do.
Remind me that I'm coming back.
Yeah. I think you have to be sober though, right? Okay.
Once for the policy committee meeting, we literally called because one jurisdiction was not present, and in the policy committee's case, there's no out. You have to have every jurisdiction there, otherwise you don't have a quorum, right?
Right.
So we literally picked up the phone and went, where are you? Person drove in like 5 minutes later and we had a quorum. So
Oh, good.
we have done it.
All right. So, but I think we've resolved that. That's what we're going forward with is the looking at 3 options. We'll have them in the agenda email for the January meeting. And we will discuss further. All right, number 7, staff reports.
Okay, the PC policy committee was actually for the most part kind of focused on the regional authority, kind of the presentation information that you had there. Other information is that they are proof that we are proceeding on the river corridor study with the consultants. So that was the other big item, and they've done I'm blanking on the vision and draft statement items. Was it? Ian, you touched on that, but it was fairly brief, correct?
Yes. identify some basic principles and put them in this statements. I've been trying for a while to get FAMPO to develop a long haul provision. And it's been very hard. It was very hard when I arrived. Actually, because the jurisdictions were not prepared to discuss almost anything with each other. But we've now got to the point where the policy committee basically endorsed the first page, just the first page of this thing. And we are going to slowly build it clause by clause, idea by idea. We're going to take 6 months. We'll bring you each incarnation of it to discuss and give ideas. And, in order to try and not scare anybody, I'm trying to build it slowly. So it's just the first page. So I have blanks on the first page too in some places because we haven't gotten yet to the point where we can start putting in very specific details in. So if you click on it, totally, one pager. No. Yes. And then just click on that. It's just a one pager. That's all it says. And we just put in those basic points down, and all those blanks there are the objectives. Doesn't say anything yet, but at least I got them to endorse this first page. So now we're going to fill in all the blanks and then bring it back again, and we'll ask John to show it to you and get your input on the blanks, and then we'll take it another step and another step and talk. So this is very generic. What is the purpose of FAMPO? What is the vision of FAMPO?
Okay. For the TAC, much of the initial discussion, kind of, well, I'll back up a little bit, but so you'll be aware. So they endorsed some of the amendments to the SEEP that were discussed tonight. They are also endorsing some modifications to the transportation improvement plan there, as well as we'll be opening up public comment to be open at the next meeting for policy committee. So it's going to take until January. So I'll bring that back to you in January. But most of their discussions center on the changes to the SMART scale, which is the big statewide competitive transportation funding process, and getting into some of the more technical aspects of that, as well as they start developing their kind of draft project list and kind of just sitting around the discussion of, hey, these are the projects, what categories do they kind of fall in? Is there any, everything from overlap to, are they going to be eligible for the different types of lots of funding that's in that, or the proposed changes to SMART scale going to kind of slowly nix some of those. So it's kind of just say, let's lay out our kind of proposed potential projects for the next round and just discuss that as a group, because you kind of want, because of the limited number of spots that FAMPO or GWC has, there's kind of some optimization going in there so that we are producing kind of the projects that are going to be the most competitive for those. If you'll scroll down a little bit. So yes, they had the process, and then they also discussed the Regional Transportation Authority, and got the same update that we're basically just now starting with the consultants for the river crossing, as well as the Safe Streets for All process. So, and they approved their calendar as well. So that sums up the TAC meeting.
Okay, item number 8, community reports. Anything for, I guess VDOT's not here today. But anything about VDOT report a problem? No? Okay, member reports, topics of interest, partner information? No? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Super. Move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, well, your feet.
All right.
Thank you.
It's.
You do know that we're heading